were going to be back last year, and it's just amazing that we are back, and we're not going to have that same taste in our mouth from last year, that's for sure.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. That was J.J. McCarthy on the Fox postgame after Saturday night's Michigan win over Purdue in the Big Ten title game. I got my money's worth out of that interview with Allison Williams after the game. Everything that he said, it was very quote-worthy. All the way through that interview, and, that final part, I think, is music to Michigan fans' ears. What was it again? You want to hear it?
We said we were going to be back last year.
Said we were going to be back? And we are back. We're not going to leave with that bad taste in our mouth. That's what J.J. McCarthy said there. It's the Maize and Blue Review. Good afternoon, Michigan football. It's great to be here with you on this Thursday, December the 8th. We're, however you look at it, into the holiday season where you start maybe playing Christmas music, really, getting the tree out, the decorations and all of that, getting into the holiday spirit. I'm all for that. I like the holiday spirit. I like the holidays. So, here I am. And today, we're going to be talking about Michigan football. It could be a surprise to you, but if you've watched this show every day, it probably is not going to be a surprise. We're live weekdays at 1:00, talking about the latest in Michigan sports. And sure enough, the basketball team plays tonight, a 9:00 tip in Minneapolis. And I'll be on after that game with the Michigan basketball postgame live and really talking about all the ins and outs with Juwan Howard's Wolverines, their first Big Ten game of the season. They'll have to go without their starting point guard for tonight and for the rest of the year. Jalen Llewellyn hurting his knee, and he is out for the season. That happened Sunday afternoon in London. So, that puts Michigan in a tough spot, a tight spot. We'll talk all about that tonight after the game. We'll see how the Wolverines do against the Gophers. But we're going to talk about football today. A lot of little things happening for, Michigan and what's going on with the Wolverines when you think about them. And I've got a question for you, a question of the day, and it's about surprises. I'm looking for, when you think about the biggest surprises or just a surprise regarding the Michigan football team this season, what was a surprise to you? It could be something big. It could be something small. Like something big, you could say, I'm surprised that the team's sitting here 13-0. I would agree with that. I'm surprised. I just want to see what everybody's going to say, and then I'll say, that surprised me too. Maybe we'll all agree, wow, that was a surprise, that was a surprise, that was a surprise, that was a surprise. But, that would be a big one, saying, you're surprised that Michigan went undefeated. And like I said, I would agree with that. It could be something small. Like I'm going to say the usage of A.J. Henning is a running back or as a wide receiver. And you could say that's something negative. A.J. Henning's an outstanding player. He's a big part of this Michigan team. He was, certainly big in the return game. And, Michigan had a lot of different wide receivers, a little bit of a log jam there. But that was a surprise to me, the usage. So it could be positive, it could be negative, something big, something small. A Michigan surprise in 22. You put it on the comments there, fill it up, and we'll see where people are at. Now, we also, we're getting close to the early signing period in recruiting. You're probably all aware of that. It is going to take place on December the 21st, and today being the 8th, that is, 13 days away that you'll have the early signing period. And I got a little recruiting rumor for you. I want to see how you would handle it. It's a big rumor, but it also, I want the part about it I'm going to work through is how I would handle it, how you would handle it when it comes down to the big recruiting rumor that I'm going to present to you. Former Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara was on a podcast with his quarterback guru and the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans, and he had a number of things to say. I'll give you my opinion on what Cade had to say. I wanted to say, and it is, people say that's clickbait. And as I was typing it out, putting some things up there just to say, okay, this is what it is. This is the podcast and everything else. I wrote up there, Cade Shade. It's a nice headline, it rhymes, shade and Cade. So I put it up there and I said, I don't really need to be that big of a, clickbait. I mean, but it worked. So it was such a nice headline that I kept it there for a second. Like, is that going to attract people if I put Cade Shade and then put a question mark? Maybe. But I took it off and I just put Cade McNamara up there. You can decide whether it's shade or not when we get to that coming up. And the other thing is it's not happening this year. The 14 playoff is set and it's not happening next year. But in 2024, it's going to be a 12-team playoff. So I looked at what the 12-team playoff would look like this year if the rules for 2024 were in place and how Michigan and everybody else would slot in there. And if there would be any controversy, of course, there's always going to be controversy and talking points and all that. So we'll have some fun with that. So we've got a lot to get to here, talking about Michigan and what's going on. And we start with asking you specifically about the surprises this year, big or small, when it comes to Michigan. What surprised you about the 2022 Michigan football team, and the grandiose surprise and the little bitty surprise, positive or negative? Cade McNamara, we're going to be talking about him in a little bit. Was it a surprise how it ended up playing out? We talked about all off season. Actually, everybody did. It was the number one story for Michigan football in the offseason is how Jim Harbaugh was going to handle the quarterback competition. How was it going to play out? And, I had all the different scenarios. I think this, and I listened to everybody else present, what their scenario would be and how it would play out. I remember predicting, ironically now, that by October 1st, with Michigan playing at Iowa, ironic because that's where Cade McNamara transferred to, that J.J. McCarthy would start by the Iowa game. And, it wasn't that like the biggest like out on the ledge type prediction or anything, but it's a little bit sooner than I think most people were predicting. And then it was a surprise when Jim Harbaugh came out and said, we're going to have a battle royale quarterback one-on-one. Cade's going to start game one. JJ's going to start game two, and let's go. And everybody's like, whoa, Harbaugh's crazy. What are you doing? This will tear the team apart. How can you do this? And it was wild. I mean, no coach had ever come out and had done anything like this. Lloyd Carr had gone like, hey, we're going to have Brady's going to start, and then Henson's going to play the second quarter, and then he would decide in the second half. That was something that a lot of people thought that, Harbaugh might do. And, however, he was going to divvy up the snaps and everything. And we know how he did it. Now, that was a surprise how he ended up, presenting the quarterback battle. I amended my prediction about McCarthy starting game, the game against the Hawkeyes, Michigan's first road game on October 1st. When I saw the Harbaugh plan, I figured that McCarthy would win the starting job. He would be impressive enough that he would start by then game 3 and wouldn't look back. That's how it ended up playing out. But, I'm not giving myself too big of a hand there, too big of a pat on the back, because I think there were a lot of people that were thinking the same thing as me. So those are the kind of things that I'm talking about when it comes down to a surprise. And like I said, if you're just joining us, I also thought it was a surprise. And you can look at personnel and how Jim Harbaugh ended up using certain players and how they fit into this team. I was surprised that AJ Henning, all off season, I was talking about, Henning, just think about him. They love getting him the ball, on end arounds and, throwing him quick screens and, and Deebo Samuel, put him in the backfield, give him a handoff. And I think one game, which game was it? Was it like against UConn or something? I think one game he lined up in the backfield there. I was like, oh yeah, there it is. And then that was it. And then he wasn't out there at all, so wide receiver, That was a surprise to me. This exercise is a fun one, even if you're putting something like you could say that that's kind of negative, talking about AJ Henning. That's a surprise that, he didn't get more run in the offense, in particular at running back. And okay, I'm not even disagreeing with that. But when the team goes 13-0, like you just say, even if it is something negative, you look at it and you say, well, the coaches, they surprised you, but they made the right move to be able to get to the end, at least to the end of the Big Ten season, and now into the college football playoff. The decisions that they made, the surprises that they sprung, they mostly worked, and it had them in the end exactly where you want to be, undefeated. I laugh at a little bit because, sometimes you say some of the obvious things because even though I'm laughing and even though Michigan is 13-0, all along the way, it hasn't just been everybody been like, oh yeah, everybody, these guys are making all the perfect decisions. This thing's going great. Even the last game, even the last two games, like Michigan, they have played tight games in the first half, which has caused people to like, oh my God, this thing is not going to go the way that you wanted it to because of how they are playing. And against Ohio State in that first quarter, it was, I think a lot of people were like, yeah, this is not, they lost heart. Donovan Edwards is hurt. JJ's not clicking with his wide receivers. This thing just, you can be patient and everything else. This game is not over. But it wasn't until he hit that 3rd and 9 to give you a little bit of hope to Cornelius Johnson that sparked the Wolverines, overall team. Certainly the offense, and the rest is history right now. All right, let's see where people are at when it comes down to a surprise for Michigan. Who used to say it? Was somebody used to say surprise, surprise, surprise. It was Jim Neighbors. As if you're a young person, you have no idea who Jim Neighbors is. He was this fantastic singer who also played in the sitcom way back in the day, because I don't even think it was black and white. He played Gomer Pyle. I think that's what, Gomer used to say, surprise, surprise, surprise. Travis is asking me if I saw the Cade interview. Yeah. I'm going to talk about that coming up, about Cade. Travis indicating his biggest surprise, the defense being even better this year than last year. Well, Travis, if we're ticking things off, maybe after having an undefeated season, maybe that should be the second biggest surprise, or maybe the biggest surprise. Because, I will take us back to the offseason, and you would look over on the defensive side of the ball, and you heard what Harbaugh said. I don't remember exactly when he said it, and I don't even know if he said it this way exactly, but he said, that defense is scary. The one part I was like, ooh, scary, a lot of guys. But then he just started mentioning them, going over them like Taylor Upshaw, Mike Morris, Braden McGregor, Jalen Harrell. It's like, okay, they're gonna replace Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo on those 25 sacks. It's not going to be one guy. It's going to be as a group. And then it sounded very like Harbaugh is a coach. So once in a while, or almost all the time, he's going to use coach speak. And he did in this instance where he was like, maybe Mike Morris will be the next Aiden Hutchinson, like that kind of stuff. You're right. Nobody was thinking that the defense was going to be better. Nobody thought that they were going to get to the quarterback and pressure the quarterback more than they did last year as a group, being able to do it. And they did. Now, Jesse Minter would seem like a chip off the old block. Like, like if you went up, how they have those wax masks sometimes. It's a horror movies that like rip it off. If you went up there, I kind of want, if I meet Jesse Minter, I'd like to go up to his face and like grab it. Like, I kind of feel like if I ripped off this mask, it would be like Mike McDonald standing there like, hey, these guys, they coach the same way, which is a good thing because McDonald was pretty good last year. But yeah, Travis, what a good one. How about the Michigan defense being better than last year? I don't even know, we talk to a lot of what you would say, in radio, we call them P1s, but we're just going to call you big time Michigan fans, dyed in the wool Wolverine fans. Even the biggest Michigan fans were sitting around saying, oh, yeah, I think this defense is going to be better than. Nobody was saying that. Nobody. And there were a few people predicting Michigan to be undefeated. I remember on this very VCast, a few people saying, I didn't think Ohio State was all of that and that Michigan would be able to go down there and win that game. And you guys were right. That's a little bit of a surprise to me. All right, let's look at some more of the surprises, big or small, from the Michigan football team. People talking about that Cade interview. We will get to it coming up. I'm going to give you my opinion on it. Todd is looking. We'll see if he has a surprise. He's got one. He was surprised by the secondary. Stroud scanning back and forth. The secondary, I liked Jaimon Green last year. DJ Turner came on last year. The Agent Zero aspect of the secondary, Mike Sanra or as Harbaugh and the team call him, Mikey Sanra going over to the other side of the ball as he played wide receiver for his first 3 years, kind of a possession receiver for U of M, but going over on the defensive side and being a factor, a big factor, being a slot cover guy. And it was evident right away. That was another thing that Harbaugh was saying in the preseason, that sounded a little coach speak stuff to me, even though San Risto was the captain. He was like, San Risto's really good over on the defensive side. You want to believe things like that, but you hear enough coach speak and enough coaches talking, you're like, oh, San Risto's just going over the defensive side, and he's just some amazing slot corner guy now, huh? Okay, well, let's see that. So you got those three guys, and then Will Johnson. Will Johnson, you expect a lot when you have. This is the part of the recruiting game where you get a 5-star. And what comes with being a 5-star comes expectations and comes for fans where they think you got a superstar, just add playing time. And in Will Johnson, when you looked at the entire Big Ten, he was the top ranked recruit coming in last year. Michigan had him, and it was number 2, Will Johnson. And, Will, wasn't immediately out there, but if we're sitting here and, we're just coming off just last Saturday where he played great. I mean, he played, you want to tell me that you thought Will Johnson should have been the MVP of the Big Ten title game? All right. I think I would have voted for Will Johnson myself. The way that he tackled, the pass breakups, both of the interceptions were huge in that game. Meanwhile, Donovan Edwards was pretty good as well. So, fighting it out on which one was the MVP, we haven't really done that, but it wouldn't have been a big reach at all. Nobody would have said, oh, that's crazy. So he's coming off his best game. But he played well against Ohio State, and you just seen him they've got the emoji of a graph that, is trending up. Will Johnson, like every game, Will Johnson trending up. What was it? The one game, was it Hawaii? They took a shot down the sideline. Maybe they took 2 shots, and the one, he looked like he was in pretty good position, and the other guy, they caught the ball, and people were like, Will Johnson. Somebody caught the ball on him, but he's been everything that you hope for as advertised, and part of that secondary. The secondary also includes the safeties, and almost by a man there, Rod Moore is I think the most underrated player on this team. Harbaugh always talks about him. I want 11 Rod Moores. Rod Moore is fabulous, and between McCarthy Page and RJ Moten, back and forth there. Michigan's got a really good secondary. And, that is a surprise because, Vincent Gray kind of did get passed up late last year, but Dax Hill was a first round pick, the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's like, you're just gonna lose a chess piece like Dax Hill, and the secondary is going to be awesome. Or you got a super senior in Brad Hawkins, who was also part of that secondary last year. And remember, he made the big play, the strip at Nebraska last year, made the play to seal that game. You lose Hill and you lose Hawkins. Those are two big losses. But yeah, the secondary was able to step up there. It's a very good one, Todd. I'm right with you on that. Here's Richard talking about the media. That was one of my favorite things, evaluating the media. Let's see. He's surprised the media has come around to Michigan's success, but not surprised there was kickback as well. Well, I think what you're talking about with media, and it's one of those funny things for the last, certainly during, we'll say just Harbaugh's tenure. So this is in his 8th year. So the previous 7 years, how many times, I would see Michigan fans, saying Paul Feinbaum's a Blake hole, this guy's SEC honk, all of the things that you hear. He hates Jim Harbaugh. I'm so sick and tired of him. And like, that's all they would say. I'll tell him, I was like, Paul Feinbaum's an entertainer. And yeah, he's from SEC country. Works at SEC country. He is an SEC guy. He works for ESPN. And yeah, he's going to look for something. I can tell you this. When you're in the media, it's like if you're writing a story and you write a story and you write 10 stories and one of the stories gets like a million hits and all the other ones get like, 5, 10, 20,000. And then one gets a million. Every time Paul Feinbaum talked about Jim Harbaugh, he got a million hits. People were like, oh, this is awesome. So do you think, what was he going to do? He was just going to keep after it. He's going to keep talking about Harbaugh. And so was it a surprise that when Jim Harbaugh turns the table on Ohio State, gets into the college football playoff 2 years in a row, that there was Paul Feinbaum saying, Jim Harbaugh has done a very nice job. Good job, Jim Harbaugh. Everybody's like, oh my, what? Yeah. But the other part, the kickback. I don't really understand what the kickback that you're talking about. Michigan State? Is that the kickback? Ohio State? Rivals? I don't get the media kickback. You'd have to explain that a little bit more. Richard, account 22, is surprised at how fast the secondary is. Pops off the screen. Here's one from Agent Zero. David Gilbert is surprised about NIL. He typed it in 3 times. I'm a little surprised by the NIL as well. Account 22 has said no NIL talk. All right, I'll do that because I am somebody that all off season talked about the NIL too much. I would agree that I talked about it an awful lot. David, surprised about the backup quarterback. Yeah, well, the backup quarterback for the first 2.5 games was Cade McNamara. And then he got hurt, and then we don't even know. I guess it would have been Davis Warren, or it could have been Alan Bowman, or it could have been Alex Orji. I don't think. Luckily, we didn't have to find out who was a quarterback too, and to see what it would have been like with Davis Warren. That's it. NIL. Okay, here's Jason with a surprise about this 22 team. Their love for each other, their love of God, and their love of Michigan football. NIL and portal, you don't see that anymore. Bo would be proud of the team. Yeah. Well, certainly when Donovan Edwards is in an interview, he's going to declare his love. And Jim Harbaugh, is not afraid to tell everybody what he thinks about his faith or his religion or his opinions on all of those things. So maybe all of that, as you're talking about it, I, it's interesting when you talk about a team and that they love each other and they've come together. And a lot of times, and I'm not trying to take it away from any of them because I see what you're saying about them. They do really seem like they like each other. They gelled. Uh, when you do have a special team and they do end up winning it, like this particular team, this is one of the great things. There's a lot of great things about being on a championship team, but they are now canonized. Like this team will come back in 10 years, in 15 years, in 25 years, and that they will be out there at the stadium, and we all know that we'll be talking about them. And just think if they win 2 more games. They win 2 more games than this particular team. And what you're talking about, their love for one another, these guys will be household names. These guys will be forever held up in great regard in Michigan football history as being a champion, a national champion. I mean, like, yeah, oh yeah. Now you're that part. I'm listening to you, Jason, and talking about what you're saying, or listening to what you're saying. Here's Antoine about biggest surprise. I'm not surprised at all. In fact, I predicted Michigan do the same thing next year. I'm sorry. I'm not surprised at all. In fact, I predicted Michigan to do the same thing next year. Well, I have to give it to Antoine here for just a second. I was a little hard on him yesterday, telling him that he that he lost the argument with me when it came down to running backs. And, Antoine took his L, and accepted it. I was impressed by him, his ability to take the L with arguing with me. It's hard to argue with me since I'm controlling everything. And, so I'm really just joking with you. But I do have to go back because Antoine is one of the outstanding people on the feedback that during the offseason would remind me how wrong I was on certain things. And one of those things, every time I talked about Ohio State, like, oh, Michigan's got to go down to the snake pit, Antoine would get on the feedback and he wouldn't just write like one sentence. He would write like a lot of different feedbacks telling me that he is not impressed with Jim Knowles' defense, that he doesn't think that defense is all that it's cracked up to be down in Columbus, that he sees division with Ohio State. He was not all that impressed with Ryan Day. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about in the offseason. And I have to admit, there were a couple times I said, I don't know, Antoine, I don't see any maize and blue glasses on there with you, but you sound a little bit like a big, little bit too pro Michigan here. You don't sound like you're seeing things objectively. And he kept saying, no, I'm going to call it like I see it. And he called that Ohio State, that they were very beatable, and that Michigan not only would have a chance to go down there, that they would go down there if they were able to get it all together with the quarterback of JJ McCarthy. He had a couple qualifiers on there, but one of them was that JJ was going to be the quarterback and that they would allow him to use his feet and that he would be able to get the passing game going, where we didn't know exactly leading up that it was going to take all of that time, but he was, big on, the passing game married up with the running game and Michigan's ability to go down there. He thought if all of that happened, that Michigan would be able to go down and beat Ohio State. So, Antoine, you were right on that. I'm surprised that you were so right about that. RS. I am not surprised Michigan had field trips have been so successful for team building. Oh, the trip around Michigan? How about this, Richard? When Harbaugh first hatched the idea of traveling the world. Where was the first one? Italy or France? I don't remember. But there were a lot of non-Michigan fans who looked at this and said, "What's this have to do with football? This isn't. This is just some trick." And I looked at it like I remember saying the first time that if Michigan had success on the field, that there would be a lot of other coaches who would look at it and say, "We have to do something like this," because I predicted that Michigan going around and going to these locales would be a heck of a team builder that would really get to know one another and what that can do for your mindset and team chemistry and all of that. Meanwhile, they didn't have great success in the first, second, third, all these different times that they were able to do it, and mostly people just laughed at it. Outside of Michigan, I still think Michigan people liked it. Heck, the people that I know that the big time donors liked it because they liked they liked going down to South Africa and Cape Horn and looking out over the bluffs and hanging out with the coaches or drinking tea next to the Arc de Triomphe, all that stuff, down at the Eiffel Tower. They all loved all that stuff. I know a lot of the writers did as well. It's like, oh yeah, we're following Michigan down here to Italy. It's a real tough job. So, but then this year, taking the trip around the state of Michigan. Yeah, kind of that is a surprise, and how that worked with the team building this year. You see them all on the bikes and sitting up on the porch at Mackinac and all that. The first leg of that, what was it? Visiting a penitentiary in Flint and serving meals and all of that. Like, oh yeah, there it is. Let's see if we have some more surprises. Surprises. Well, I'm a little bit behind because I see people are talking about Homer Pile, Gomer Pile. I like what? I like Homer Pile better. There's somebody asking about Eric All and why did he transfer? Well, Eric All, like 2 weeks ago, was saying that he was coming back, but between now and then, something happened. Maybe it was Cade recruiting him to Iowa, and then he left, and then he said some unclear things about how he was treated. I don't know what he was referring to. If it was a medical situation that he didn't feel comfortable with. I think that's what he was referring to. I'm not 100% sure on that. He has not gone on a podcast and said anything about it, but I believe, if I had to take a guess at it, he didn't like the opinions of I think the staff or the medical staff about where he was in terms of his treatment or being able to come back or whatever like that. And we're going to get to, I think, what the All situation will fold into a lot of the Cade situation, in my opinion, on McNamara, that we're going to get to coming up. And, I have been running through a lot of these surprises, and let's get to some of those right now. Count 22 saying 3-star into a 5-star. In Rod Moore's case, that's a surprise. And I would agree with that. Here's a recruiting rumor that I wanted to throw your way just to see how you would react to it. Dante Moore, the quarterback from Detroit, has committed to Oregon. He did that a long time ago, and the ship has sailed with Dante being a Duck, or has it? We have 13 days to go. And you may remember you may remember last month that Michigan State perked up and they were like, we're in hot pursuit of Dante Moore now, trying to flip him. And I'm not here to tell you that I think that Michigan is trying to flip Dante Moore. But what I am here to do is to present you a question, is if Dante Moore was interested still in Michigan. Now, I think he's 99 point something percent committed to Oregon, and I expect him to sign there. But what if he was picking up the phone and calling Michigan? I thought it was interesting because the Maize and Blue Review, where I work, we have a posting board called The Den. And there was a poster on there. He was talking about Dante Moore and this hypothetical about what if Moore called up Harbaugh. And I was surprised to see how many people were saying, no, hang up the phone on Dante Moore. Nope, don't take Dante Moore. Nope, don't entertain his call. This one's over. The water under the bridge. Ship has sailed. I mean, all of those things. Now, I think all of those people were saying that because they don't think they have a shot at all for Dante Moore. So in a hypothetical situation, they're like, let's just move on. You know, they've been hurt. They were hurt. It happens. You know, you put your recruiting heart into certain players, and when they're 5 stars and they're local guys and they're quarterbacks, a lot of your eggs go into that basket. And when it doesn't happen and they go somewhere else, you're heartbroken. So a hypothetical about the possibility of more being on the line, people don't want to get into those hypotheticals. It is a little bit like a long lost love of yours and saying, hey, what if she called you? I'm not thinking about that. My question to you is, are you taking that call if you're Jim Harbaugh? Or are you saying, no, Dante, we have actually moved on? Boom. Because again, I was a little bit surprised, but I think with an understanding of how people were thinking about that situation because they were all hurt. Account 22 says he would rather have Jaden Davis. And I think that account 22 is speaking for most Michigan fans right now. The ship has sailed with Moore. He's 99.9% in with Oregon. So why are we even entertaining 13 days away from the early signing period that there still might be an inkling of a chance? Because you know what? He doesn't have his name on the piece of paper yet. The letter has not gone in. I still take that call. And there's plenty of guys that have gone down to the 13th hour and they've looked one way and then they flip at the last moment. So I'm not holding anything, you know, different things happen. You know, some upfront money, long trips, maybe you take a couple long trips. And I know I'm just, again, this is hypothetical. It was only last week or the week before that I saw a picture of Dante Moore standing next to the what's the coach of Oregon's name? Dan Landing. Those guys standing right next to each other, you know, in front of this gigantic Christmas tree. And looked as happy as could be. So no, I don't think Dante Moore is flipping to Michigan. I just wanted to see what everybody thought. It is a quarterback. He is a 5-star. Jesse says he would rather have more if he calls. He's a 23. Davis is a 24. Yeah, see, there's some people that are still going to be at least taking the call when it comes down to Dante Moore. And yeah, I mean, like as it sits right now, so we don't know if JJ McCarthy is going to leave after his junior season. If he does do that, you are looking at a situation where you look at Michigan's quarterback room and you're saying, uh-oh. And they may, at that point, like a lot of teams, they may be going into the transfer portal, which would be an option for them if McCarthy would leave. I think we all on here, you wish JJ McCarthy the best. I wish him the best. Actually, every player that ever, goes to Michigan, I wish him all the best. I hope it works out. How, and I know it doesn't. We're going to get to that coming up, but I want them all to have it work out for them, and for them to be the best version that they could possibly be. That's I'm not an old softy that way. I think that's the way most people look at it. Like, come on, man, you guys have a gift. Hopefully, you're able to fulfill that, and best of luck to you. But I hope JJ McCarthy comes back and plays for 2 more years for Michigan. The quarterback position, just think about that for a second. You got JJ for 1 more year for sure, but what about having JJ for 2 more? Now, look, if JJ goes out and plays, like, what was it, Antoine just predicting earlier that he not only predicts Michigan, going to the college football this year, he's thinking they're going back next year. He's already talking about next year. Well, with JJ at the controls, what about JJ for 2 more years? And that's where Jaden Davis, and over these next 13 days, how the recruiting looks, Michigan hasn't been doing all that hot, and in terms of the rankings and everything. And, they may be just taking the temperature of how everything's working. And in this particular class, they are, they've taken, the Ronnie Bell class just from a few years ago. There's a lot of guys that are involved in these back-to-back Big Ten championships. That was not a highly thought of class. So you can have a wobble every once in a while in a class, and that's how this one has looked. But it does put, if it's not pressure, it certainly increases the intensity of having to, get some bigger time players, bigger time recruits. I say that, the coaches are like, we think these guys are great. You need some 5 stars. You need some, you would think. And Davis would be one of those. But that's the little recruiting spiel rumor part that I wanted to get to. Now, and Michigan still is. I mean, there's Nicholas Harbor, the 5-star out of Washington, D.C. We'll see on him. I've got my fingers crossed on Harbor the whole time. I still think there's a chance there. Meanwhile, let's get to that Cade McNamara story. This has developed over the last 24 hours or so. Cade McNamara was on a podcast. Jordan Palmer, if you're watching on the screen, the brother of former quarterback USC and Cincinnati Bengal, Arizona Cardinal quarterback Carson Palmer, Jordan Palmer. Cade McNamara is pictured right in the middle with a bright light behind his head. And then the dude all the way over to the right is Kyle Allen, who's the Houston Texans quarterback. He's been starting for the last couple games, I think, for the Texans in their season. But Cade McNamara was on their podcast. It's called The Room with the guru Jordan Palmer and Kyle Allen. I put some quotes up here of what McNamara said. It was a long pod. I listened to the first 15 or 20 minutes. And here's what he said about his time at Michigan. He was appreciative of being named captain. He says, I have the first game, and he has the second game, talking about the quarterback competition. Some stuff is going on, talk around the team stuff, some stuff that I just won't get into. All right, let's stop it right there. Predictably, and I've already seen it for Michigan fans, like they're, Cade's throwing shade, Cade was a captain. Now Cade's, bad-mouthing Michigan. I looked at it from both sides. Cade was the starting quarterback for Michigan last year. The 1 point, Jordan Palmer says that that Michigan overall was pretty thankless for Cade McNamara and what he did last year. I don't agree with that. I think the majority of Michigan fans were very thankful for Cade McNamara last year. Absolutely thankful for him. I know that from the outside you can look and say, the fans were booing Cade Mac. There were some fans that were booing Cade McNamara because of his performance out there. And when you're going into Michigan Stadium, you're not asked, "Hey, how big of a Michigan fan are you? Let's have you take a breathalyzer. And are you going to cheer for the team?" You can just come in whatever you want. There's going to be some of those fans at every stadium across the country. So to say that, that the fans were booing him, everybody was against him, there was this, some people were. He didn't play really well. He didn't deserve to get booed. That was not something that I'm for at all. That was bad on those people. They did it, whatever. My thought is that look, Cade went, he went to Indianapolis. He was named captain of the team. He's the defending Big Ten champ. Everything's going great. He's named captain of the Michigan football team. The greatest individual honor that can be bestowed upon a Wolverine football player, I've been told over the years. And he has been named that. The next day, Harbaugh says, we're competing game 1 and game 2. That's a tough thing to handle. Even Harbaugh himself, when he talked about the quarterback competition, said, JJ runs around better. Cade's probably a little bit better of a passer. And then it came down to, I think the intangible X factor thing. And he said, it's a tough one to call. I think he said a little bit, probably Cade there. So after all that, if there was not the kind of schedule that Michigan had presented this year, and if it was with any other team, I think that we could all say that McNamara would have been named the starter. And then, they were going to maybe play JJ and C after that, but it would have been Cade's team. And I'm sure people were telling Cade that, oh, man, this sucks for you. And for Harbaugh's side, people say he thought McCarthy was going to win this job all along. He may have thought that that McCarthy was more talented than Cade McNamara, and that JJ didn't get to work out and compete in the spring. That's tough. The big thing about that quarterback competition, and Cade revealed it after the first game, is that there wasn't going to be any kind of rotation or flipping around. Cade said, it's not happening this year. We're just going to have one guy. And I was like, yeah, because that's what I wanted. I mean, so selfishly, I thought that was a good move, because it is a good move, because it doesn't work. I think Harbaugh knows that. It doesn't work to have, 2 cooks in the kitchen. You got to have one. So that was important. But I can understand people were all upset. Cade, and, Cade came out, and let's just say it, he crapped the bed. The pressure was on him, and he came out, and JJ, when he was given his opportunity, looked like a superstar. And unfortunately for Cade, so within a week, he went from riding high and looking great, and I'm the quarterback, to rug pulled out, didn't play well, McCarthy's going to take the job. That fast. So after the game, I understood how he felt, a little blindsided and a little upset and a little bitter. Other people were like, you're a captain, stand up there and be a man. Look, I was not a club of one, but I understood how he was a little shaken about that. I also think that throughout the year, and even sitting there today, I think if you ask Cade McNamara, you got to be pretty competitive if you're going to be a quarterback in college, and you got a lot of people telling you a lot of things. Do I think that Cade McNamara thinks that if he was named starter and was healthy this year, that Michigan would be sitting in the college football playoff at 13-0? Yes, I do think he thinks that. So he feels like he got robbed a little bit. Can you feel like that even if you're the biggest Michigan fan, that, you can understand how he feels that he got robbed a little bit? I can, and I can understand how he'd be a little bit upset about that. I know some Michigan fans, if it's not Michigan and you're not doing everything, you're either with us or against us. I get that too, but, I feel a little bit for the guy. This kind of stuff, talk around the team stuff, some stuff that I just won't get into. When you do that, it leads to what? speculation. So now we can say whatever we want. There was some stuff going on in the team, factions going on in the team, factions with the coaches like this. Let me give you a little advice. Yeah, it is advice. In sports, most of you have been involved in some kind of team sport at some point. Maybe not in college or pro, but high school or even earlier than that. When you are on a team, you are going to have drama. When you put people together, you're going to have drama. Whatever kind of sport or group that you're in, there's drama. Girlfriends, coaches, money, playing time. It's all there, and it happens with every team. Now, get big time money and then put the quarterback situation, the brightest lights on there, and have this situation go down. It's drama filled. And if you tried not to do it, so it's going to be tons of drama. Now you add in somebody saying, "Yeah, there's stuff that I'm not getting into." Well, now you've got people that can do whatever they want and say whatever they want about it. So I don't know, that situation there. It is amplified usually when, if you give me a team at any level, anywhere, and a losing team, I can usually tell you, oh, here comes a drama of this guy talking about this and this guy talking about that. And I can also tell you that if Michigan would not have had success this year, like if they would have dropped a couple ball games, say they lost to Rutgers and Ohio State, this drama would be way up here drama. People are like, and there would have been a lot of Michigan fans saying we should have kept Cade and Cade should have been the guy. Hell, people were saying that after the first quarter of the Ohio State game, that they would have wished that maybe Cade would have been in this situation. He would have been a better quarterback for Michigan. That's true. That's not just like a couple booing fans. That was a lot of people thought that. But now that it's worked out for Michigan, like Michigan made the right choice. That's tough for somebody like Cade McNamara. Even if he was a captain, I still give him a little bit of a break on that. Like he thinks they would have been 13-0, and you're saying, hey, just, accept your plot in life and move on. Like that's what people want him to do. But then there was this part, which I'm going to read to you, which I thought was one of those things that I don't know. Remember we talked about it being a medical situation with Eric All, possibly because All wouldn't really say what it was. And we know that he had a back issue. And so, I don't know if that's putting two and two together, but, it's either, money, playing time, or injury status. So, riffs with the coaches. I mean, it's got to be one of those things. And when they don't say what it is, you're going to speculate. Well, here's McNamara talking about his injury. And I'm going to read some of his quotes from the podcast that he was just on with Palmer and Allen. Here's McNamara. I'm quoting him. I completely messed it up. I tore my MCL. I didn't know this until my MCL was messed up, but I tore my patellar halfway through the season last year, actually against Michigan State. That's a whole story in itself. That was Cade McNamara. Now, he says that U of M cleared him to play again this year, despite the MCL tear that he had against UConn. McNamara says that then he went to get in a second opinion and said, quote, my knee was completely open still and was determining, the doctor was, whether to have a repaired MCL or get a cadaver and full reconstruction. All right, so when you see that, you're like, wait a second, he's throwing shade at Michigan, Cade and shade. He's not leaving on the best terms and all of this. Going to get back to, I get the frustration and how it played out with the quarterback competition. I don't know if you do or not. I understand the frustration there. When it comes to medical opinions, doctors, they can't talk about it. The coaches can't talk about it. So here's Cade talking about it. So you do have to take things with a grain of salt. But is it possible that Michigan thought after the Michigan State game last year, whatever the injury was with Cade's knee, that he could play with it through the rest of the year? Yes, I think it's possible. Actually, we saw him play the rest of the year, including the bowl game. When he got injured after the UConn game, could it also have been Michigan's opinion that he could have waited until the end of the season and been Michigan's backup until he had that surgery, or maybe he didn't need it at all? There's a possibility there. So there is a possibility there. So, and the thing about it doesn't mean that Michigan is being like should be criticized for this. Michigan looking out for Michigan and then Cade looking out for Cade. Do I think he might have a point about this? Because you know when it comes to medical opinions, like I was just listening today to the I guess you would call it recruitment of Odell Beckham Jr. Who went down to see Dallas, and the Cowboys leaked out that, oh yeah, it's a knee with Odell Beckham Jr., who got hurt in the Super Bowl last year, and he looked like he was ticketed to go to Dallas. But the Cowboys leaked out that their medical team didn't think that Odell Beckham Jr. was going to be ready until next year, was not going to be able to be ready for them in the playoffs, was not going to participate with them. And so, they have cooled on Odell Beckham Jr. Meanwhile, Beckham says his doctors say that he'll be ready to go in 5 weeks. And then you've got the Buffalo Bills and the New York Giants who are putting him through the tests, who also are going to have their doctors, and they may say like that Odell Beckham Jr. is ready to go in a month or 5 weeks as well. Maybe they'll declare it like Dallas or whatever else. But the point here is that you get a doctor on one side, and look, this is they want him to play. They want him to participate. They want him to have him out there. And, one doctor is saying that it's going to be a year and, he needs this. And then others are saying he's ready to go in 5 weeks. I mean, how many times have you seen this? I see it a lot with athletes who have a doctor that say, you can't play anymore. Like, we're not going to clear you. It could be a shoulder, a back, a knee. We're not going to clear you. And then they go somewhere else and they keep going somewhere to a doctor's like, I think you're all right. And sometimes it works. Like, I don't know who was the corner that went to Minnesota? St. Juice. It went on. He's in the pros now. I think he's with the Bucks. Michigan wouldn't clear him, but, he went to Minnesota. Next thing you know, he was out on the field and he played well for him. So I don't know. Michigan was being careful with him, but not being careful with Cade or all. I don't know. And here's the thing, like, if you're a Michigan fan, you say, I just believe Michigan and their, medical people, even though they can't really talk about the situation. So I'm just riding with Michigan. And I get that. Just ride with Michigan. I don't know. I think it's possible that both Cade, you can understand how he could be frustrated, how he got beat out. You can even be a little sympathetic for him. You could also be Cade and understand why he might feel like he got a little raw deal when it came down to the medical situation, where he felt like maybe Michigan wanted him to fight it out, because they wanted a backup quarterback. Meanwhile, he got a second opinion, and they're like, hey, you better get this taken care of if you want to play football and go for another team next year. So a lot of the bottom line, I just took a long time talking about that, and I gave you my opinion for like 25 minutes, and now I'm going to read a few people that only get a sentence or two, which is unfortunate. But if I had to crystallize it in a sentence or two, I would say there's a lot of drama when it comes down to situations like this. And it's possible that both Michigan and Cade McNamara have a point where it comes down to his injury. And I understand why he is frustrated about getting beat out by J.J. McCarthy. It was an unusual circumstance. That's as tightly as I can say it. I understand how he could be frustrated about losing the job to J.J. McCarthy because of the unusual circumstances. And I also believe that both Michigan and Cade could have a point where it comes down to his injury. That's how I see the situation. Add in the drama of it being Michigan and an undefeated team and back-to-back Big Tens and the nature of the quarterback position, and there you go. I'm going to read some of the feedback on this. And like I said, I know because since I just talked about it for 20 minutes and was able to try to cover all of my opinions and spots and repeat myself, and it's much more difficult where yours don't have that opportunity. So I'm just going to put some of the feedback up here and see what you have to say. Rico says, I don't really care. We are undefeated without All and Cade. Obviously, we're fine. And Rico, I understand that. You don't care. That kind of stuff happens. I don't really think that you need to go this way. If I am starting from the back, people start talking about things that have already been posted and it confuses me and then others. So let me just go up a little bit here and let's just start working down from here. Gladiator says he wasn't blindsided. Did I say that he was blindsided? If I did, I could understand how he could feel like he was blindsided. Where here he is, captain. He's went all year. He was, went to Indianapolis, and then the coach brings him in and says he was blind. I think you can make a case he felt blindsided by the Harbaugh plan because no coach in the history of the game, I remember, had a plan that Harbaugh put out there. You get game one, you get game two, and then, hey, it's a battle royale. I don't remember a coach in the history of football doing that. So can I make a case that he could have been blindsided by Harbaugh's plan? I just did. So that's it. Todd says he's happy. We're in a position to lose a very good quarterback to a great one. It's been decades. Jason saying this isn't peewee football. Not everyone gets a trophy. I love him for what he was able to do. Saying that, I have faith in the coaches when making those tough decisions. I think Cade knew. Count 22, talking about a game manager versus a difference maker. Easy choice. JJ earned the job. And that's the one part on the Michigan side. Once you knew there was a competition, like Cade could have come out against Colorado State and he could have been on fire, hot as a pistol. He could have been throwing it all over the yard. He could have been running around. He could have been bowling over guys. And then JJ could have played the way that he played. And they could have come out there in game two and had the same kind of thing. And that would have made it really tough on Jim Harbaugh. Remember how tough he said it was as he went through spring? And that's why he had to go through the two games. Cade McNamara had an opportunity, even though it was a unique and difficult or different one. He could have gone out there and played much differently. As it was, I would have to say, even if Cade was in here, Cade, man, you folded up. JJ didn't just win the job. He won it by a landslide. You could have had 100 Michigan fans say, okay, we are just going to go with the Michigan fans that have randomly been selected to pick the quarterback for the rest of the year with the competition you see against Colorado State when Cade starts and JJ comes in, and then JJ start against Hawaii, and then when Cade comes in. You guys pick it. It would have been 100-0. JJ would have been picked. So, Cade doesn't have a leg to stand on when it does come down to the competition. It's a very good point. Richard. Mark saying there's no way they would be 13-0 with Cade at quarterback. I don't know. I tend to agree that they wouldn't be 13-0, but do I think they could have been 11-0 going down to Columbus? Cade used his legs, against Penn State, certainly against Iowa. He looked really good doing that. But do I think Michigan could have won at Iowa with Cade? I do. I think they could have beat State with Cade. I don't know. Illinois, there was some plays that JJ had to make, but do I think that Cade could have won against? I do. I don't. I'm not feeling, Cade winning against Ohio State. JJ played a great game. I don't think that Cade could have made. I don't think he would have won that game. So I tend to agree with you. Troy talking about Cade shade. Yeah, Cade could struggle next year. Here's Montreal. Let's see. Montreal says, I never was high on Cade as a player. I honestly think he gets way too much credit for last year's success. Hell, from the interview in his head, he thinks he was the reason the guy is garbage. No, I think that's over the top. And I do believe that you can look back because he was a game manager. And even in the Ohio State game, he wasn't fabulous in that game. Was he the number one reason that Michigan beat Ohio State? No. It was the offensive line. It was the defensive line. It was Hassan Haskins. It was not. And although Cade made some throws, I don't want to take anything away from him in that game. He went out there and he did something that Michigan hadn't done in 17 years. He was, and so I'm not taking anything away from him for last year. He did it. He performed. It's weird because in college football, we are also quarterback obsessed. Look at all the Heisman Trophy voters and people complaining about this is just all about quarterbacks. Well, that's what everybody looks at, the quarterbacks. But last year's Michigan team was not about the quarterback. Last year's Michigan team was about the Joe Moores. It was about the big uglies. It was about the line play. And it was about Hassan Haskins. And this year, the majority of the season, which was go back to the beginning of the show, was a little bit of a surprise to me. I was surprised that Michigan's identity remained running the football, even with a playmaker like J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback. I was surprised. And do you know how many people? And you forget now and say, no, there were, I would say, half of the Michigan fans heading into the Ohio State game were complaining about Matt Weiss and Jim Harbaugh, saying that they have turned J.J. McCarthy into a game manager. How can you take a five-star quarterback and turn him into a game manager? There were a lot of people saying. Now, I was saying that he wasn't getting the passing game clicking and that he was having trouble being on the same page and that he was pressing. And so were the wide receivers. Now, he was able to get it going with that 69-yard blast to Kojo on that 3rd and 9 in the second quarter. Then he was able to hook up with a 75-yarder with Kojo. Then he got a 35-yarder going to Loveland. Then he took him on that 11, 12-play drive, and then his confidence, which, I don't think ever wavered himself, but it looked like he was pressing. It didn't look like he was pressing on that first down in the fourth quarter when he unleashed a bomb down the middle of the field, which was supposed to be, his blind spot or the tough spot he was struggling with the most, and hit Kojo, would have hit him right in the arm. Beautiful pass if it wasn't for the pass interference. Oh, we got people that all of a sudden I can't get let me see. I'm getting a call. I'm not going to be able to take that right now. I'm also, for some reason, not being able to put the feedback up anymore. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I'm gone or not. I was here and then, I'm back. I think I got logged off somehow. I don't know if you still are with me or not. Welcome back. We had to step aside for a second, but now we're right back here talking Michigan football with you for over an hour. There have been times when I have analyzed this podcast, thought, man, maybe I should keep this down to about 15 minutes or so. That's what I noticed some of the competition is doing. But then I also thought competition can't talk for more than 15 minutes. I did have that thought, so I don't know. Okay, if you are just joining us, we have been, talking about Michigan And the latest, one of the other things that we have discussed is Cade McNamara. And so we got the feedback on that, but I don't have my graphs and everything. Those were taken away. So here's what I'm going to do tomorrow. For those of you that were really interested in me talking about the 12-team playoff, I'm glad you're interested. I am sorry to say that I'm going to take that and punt that situation until tomorrow. That's going to be one of the topics, a 12-team playoff, and what it would look like if that was instituted this year, and all the different things that went into it. But this Cade stuff, not a surprise. People were very opinionated and had a lot to say about it, and I don't know. And what happens here? I'm going to go back and I'm going to read some more. It does sound like I'm kind of beating around the bush and everything here. But the problem is, and maybe you don't want to hear my problems, when I try fast forwarding through the feedback, a lot of people are talking with other people and I kind of get lost with it. So if I don't do it in a sequential type situation, I end up sounding confused, which is very easy to do for me, to sound confused. So with that, I am going to go back and I'm going to read some of the feedback and we're going to try it at a different spot here. And we're going to start it right here with Rico. So the physicians sabotaged him and made him play like crap. I think the locker room rejected him. Yeah, like I don't know about. I think that saying the physicians sabotaged him, again, you can have the feeling Michigan's opinion of his knee, like, he was talking about, it was a whole other story against Michigan State. He ended up hurting his knee there. If he got it looked at, should Michigan have, shut down JJ McCarthy after the Michigan State game last year? Is that's what he's talking about? Or did the medical staff look at something and say, no, we're not going to tell him about this? I mean, that would be a sabotage, right? Hey, we kind of found something. Your knee was hurt, but we refused to give you that information. Like, so that's what he should say. This stuff about there was talk with the team that I'm not getting into, the Michigan State, that's a whole other story. Say it. Hey, Cade, if you got something to say about the Michigan State game, if they hid, your MRI from you or something, or Harbaugh was, crumpling it up and saying that there's nothing to see here. Because you went out last year and still played against Indiana, against Penn State. You threw that touchdown to Eric All. You played against Maryland and Ohio State, and you played in the Big Ten championship game against Iowa, and then on New Year's Eve last year you played and started against Georgia. If your knee was hurting and you felt like you were sabotaged, you should have said something to somebody. And if you did say something to somebody, say it now. That's the part. And that's like the all stuff on his way out the door saying, yeah, I'm not really getting into some of this stuff. You guys can't handle the truth. Well, no, we want to know the truth. Because now you got just a bunch of people speculating. And that's the problem with Cade here. Cade, like, I'm not getting into some of the stuff that they were saying about the quarterback competition. Why not? Say it. If you're going to be on there and you're going to be doing a podcast and you want to be, Joe, quarterback now for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I was done dirty by Michigan, well, then say it. Say what was your problem with your teammates. Don't be like, yeah, that was pretty thankless. I agree with Jordan, even though he didn't say that, but I'm not getting into. Why not? Get into it if you felt like you were done wrong. And then when he said he had his injury against Michigan State, but that's a whole other story. No, that's the exact kind of story that you should be telling if you feel like the Michigan medical staff did you wrong. Tell it. Say it. Was it Jim Harbaugh that did you wrong? We want to know, Cade. Because you went from captain to persona non grata with over here like, well, that's a story for another time. I've been done. It leaves all of this like he's been done dirty, like, people are talking about here. I tend to give the guy a break because I know how tough it is when you're on top of the world and, you've been put in this situation, feel like you're blindsided. And in the course of whether you feel like it or not, within the course of 7 days, you go from hero to backup and everybody's booing you. That's tough to take. Then you get your knee hurt. And did Michigan think that he could go for the rest of the year? I don't know if you want to say tough it out or if he could play on that knee. What their evaluation was as a backup quarterback. Did he feel like he was being, put out there on one leg and that was endangering him? Say it. Like, there's a lot of people that aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you go out there and give your honest opinion on what happened where you said, I'm not getting into it with the this and that with the locker room, I wanted to hear that. I also wanted to hear when you said that you hurt your knee up at Michigan State, but that's a whole other story. What do you mean it's a whole other story? That's the story. You don't get taken seriously and you lead to, which was already something drama-filled, where people then, we want to know the whole story, Cade. Did Michigan do you wrong? You're not telling you there's a whole other story up at Michigan State? That's the problem. That is the problem. Shouldn't Michigan have an obligation to protect the student athletes? Look, Jesse, you can talk to people that are involved with Michigan and Michigan athletics and then Michigan medicine and Michigan doctors. You would like to believe that they have the best interest of the student athlete. Number one. That's what you would like to believe. You also know that you could get 10 different doctors and you might have, some varying opinions. And that's the part that I don't know. So anybody that's saying that Michigan, well, because there's a lot of people that are just like dyed in the wool, maize and blue followers will say, look, at Michigan's overly cautious. And I've heard that a bunch. Look, I don't know, but I have had a number of people saying that, look, at when it comes down to injuries, that Michigan is going to be overly cautious when it comes down to the student athlete. Look at that, St. Juice situation that I just talked about. Michigan didn't clear him. He went to Minnesota and they're like, you're good to go. That didn't seem like Michigan was, he was a hell of a talent. It didn't seem like Michigan was trying to, let's just, like they said in Hoosiers, let's tape him up and get him out there. That didn't seem, Michigan seemed like they had the best interest of the student athlete. So are you saying in this situation? I don't know. Cade, I'm not going to side on McNamara's side when he's not going to tell us what's going on there. Because he might have a story. What happened? Did somebody read an MRI, but you felt they did you wrong against Michigan State, even though you played the rest of the year? And we're like, what's going on there? That's some important information, real key piece of information by Cade that he's said there's a whole other story there. If you're not going to tell us the whole other story, I am going to side with Michigan on that. Because Cade's not telling us anything. A whole other story. It was the same thing with All. And then his old man coming in and saying, you can't handle the truth. Like, if you're going to talk, let's hear it. What the hell? I don't know. No, I'm just yelling. Let's see. The Gladiator says, hey, Dennis, I love the podcast, but we're getting into minor league issues and not the major things going on with Michigan football. We're heading to the Natty. 2 more games to go. Go Blue. Gladiator, it's a good point. We're out here talking about guys that are even on the team, minor issues, drama-filled things. I'm here every day, every day. And I look at things that are going on. And I try to get you a Michigan question out there to talk about the team and anything that is going on now, today. I thought that this particular issue with Cade was something that would be of interest to people. That's why I talked about it. Did I have to spend a 45 minutes straight on it? Gladiator, I understand your point. I get it. And, should I have just, been breaking down the TCU too deep, looking at their numbers? We still have, you know, we've got 13 days till signing period. We've got, 23 days? We still got 3 weeks, to talk about all the particulars. But I get your point. It's very obvious in interviews who's a more genuine person. Well, if you're not going to tell us what's going on, then what are we going to do here? We got a lot of people talking about the doctors. It's Todd asking me about the Jalen Hurts situation, such as life with a stable of good quarterbacks. The Jalen Hurts situation was as they got to a championship game against Georgia. And Jalen Hurts, who's the leader in the NFL right now to be the MVP, was benched at halftime for Tua. And then Tua made the, great throw and won the championship for the Tide. Hurts stayed around and ended up being inserted when Tua got hurt, in the SEC championship game, and won the game for him. Great job by Jalen Hurts. Then he transferred and went off to Oklahoma. When Jalen Hurts goes back to Tuscaloosa, I would imagine that people are like, "You're one of the great ones, Jalen." Yeah, I just think like if you're Cade and you're on there, let's not, you know, when you're talking about your team last year and it's coming to the big moments. The biggest moment, you got beat out by JJ in those first 2 games of the season. What did Cade say? There was a lot of stuff that was going on with the team that I'm not going to get into. That's an L. That was an L for Cade McNamara. Now, he crapped the bed in those first 2 games. There's no other way to put it. He got beat out in a landslide. That was an L. I felt bad for him. I've said it repeatedly. Now he wants to go and start talking about medical decisions and his knee and that Michigan wanted to play and that it was revealed like back even last year against Michigan State. What a bomb. Psst, here he is. He's lighting the bomb, throwing it over there. Not only did I get hurt in the UConn game and Michigan wanted me to continue to play, but, oh, yeah, I hurt myself last year in the Michigan State game. There's this bomb. Throws it right in there. But that's a story for another time. What? What do we do? Cade. Yeah, you are right about that. 10 more. 10 more on Michigan. In this situation, Chuck says Cade's lucky he wasn't sitting on the bench game 1. Lucky he wasn't riding the bench last year. Wow. Montreal says the only thing that saved Cade from the bench last year was winning, and at the time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What'd I say, 4 or 5 more? Michigan would be 13-0 with Cade. Ooh, Jesse. The first down and TD and C-Bus by JJ was the difference. Yeah, I would, anybody can have their opinion. I don't think so. I don't think Michigan would be third, but I think they would have been 11-0. I mean, that's my opinion. Two more. Chuck. There are 4 to 5 plays every game that Cade would be sacked. I love what he did for us last year, but the shade on the way out the door sours my view of him. It's a very even-handed approach to the whole thing, Chuck. And then what I say, 2 more. Mark wants to know what's going on with the other running backs. It's something I'll look into and get to you, back to you tomorrow on. You want to know about running backs? Ty says JJ scrambling ability has taken our offense to the next level, something Cade couldn't do. Meanwhile, the punters says, I know there is time, but I'm surprised Anthony did not enter the portal. I don't know why I'm saying the portal. The portal. I'm surprised that Anthony wasn't more involved in the offense this year. I'm surprised that he didn't catch that ball that was placed perfectly to him in the Illinois game. I'm surprised that he didn't catch that pass that was thrown to him down the middle at Rutgers. I'm also surprised that he had family members of him running to talk to members of the media and crying about his usage. Those are all surprises to me. And I think I'm Andrell Anthony's #1 fan. But I was surprised and all that. Look, when it comes down to the portal and everything else, I want guys, they get a scholarship, they can stay here, and I don't want them to be processed or feel like they have to leave. I'd like a guy, we'll take Andrell Anthony specifically. I hope he looks at this year as a learning, take it as a learning experience in hopes that he can go out there in the semifinal and give a chance to maybe come up big for Michigan. And the same thing in terms of a championship against Georgia. Come up big against Georgia. Do what he did last year against Michigan State, against Georgia. Go for a 93-yard touchdown. There's still time for somebody like Andrell Anthony. That's the thing. Don't go jumping into the portal too soon, my man. I'd wait it out. That'd be my advice to him. Sounds like he's got a lot of other people in his ear telling him a lot of other things, but hey, doesn't mean he hasn't learned and he's his own man. He could stay around here. He could win Michigan. Andrell Anthony could go down as one of the most memorable Michigan athletes ever. And it all could happen over this next month. When's the championship game? January the 8th. In a month from now, let's say Michigan beats TCU. We all expect that to happen. How about Andrell Anthony comes up with a Kojo-type game, and he scores a 69-yard touchdown. He scores a 75-yard touchdown, and Michigan beats Georgia and wins the national championship. That's what I would be saying to Andrell Anthony. Stay the course, keep fighting, and work your tail off, and good things can happen to you. I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, for subscribing, hitting the thumbs up button. We'll be back here tomorrow. We'll look into those Michigan running backs. We'll talk about a 12-team playoff and anything else that's going on with the Wolverines. We'll address it here on Good Afternoon, Michigan.